Welcome to Q&A practice. Let's get started with plaintiff attorney. Ready? Here we go. And how did you set up the robbery? Through a mutual friend. And was this going to be a drug deal? Yes. And where was the robbery going to occur? Cambridge. And did you go to Cambridge? Yes. Who did you go with? I went with my friend Nicholas. Who had the gun? Me and Nicholas. When you got there, did you meet with two individuals? Yes, I did. Was it in their car? Yes. Explain what happened. Me and Nicholas got into the car. We were in the back seat. There were two individuals in the front passenger seat. We had talked very shortly for a couple of minutes. We had asked to see the money. They had asked to see the marijuana. When the person in the passenger seat passed me the money, I put it in my pocket, and then Nicholas reached into a bag, pulled out the gun, cocked back the slide, and then that was pretty much it. What was the reaction of the two individuals? They were in a state of panic and shock. Did they leave? We left the car after we had the money, and then they eventually, I assume, drove back home. Did you tell other people what happened? Yes. And before that incident, had you ever handled a gun before? A little bit, yes. So had you handled a gun besides this gun? No. Did you tell the defendant about the robbery? Yes. What was his reaction? He laughed. Did you take the gun out of your residence again? Yes, one more time. When was that? New Year's Eve 2012. And where did you take it? To a friend's apartment in Medford, Massachusetts. What was happening there? Nothing. We were just throwing a New Year's Eve party. Why did you take it there? I was just being stupid. I wanted to show it off. And did you? Yes. Did the defendant come to that house? Yes. Did you bring it back ultimately to your apartment at some point? Yes, I did. You said you did. Who else knew about the gun? Me, my twin brother, the defendant, and a few close associates. And how about Nicholas? Yes. Now, after that early January trip with the gun, did you talk to the defendant again about the gun? Yes. About when was that? Sometime in January. How did you have that conversation? It started over the phone, and then talked about it with him in person. When you talked to him about the gun, did he ask you for anything? Yes. What did he ask for? He asked me to potentially borrow the gun. Why did he ask you to borrow the gun? Objection to that in that form. Sustained to the form of the question. For what purpose did he ask for the gun? Objection, same objection. Yeah, rephrase it. Did he tell you why he needed the gun? Yes. What did he tell you? He said he wanted to rip some kids from URI. When you say rip, what does that mean? Rob, is that what you did with Nicholas after a few months earlier? Yes. Did he make arrangements to come by your apartment? Yes. Approximately when did he come by your apartment? Within the next couple of weeks after we started talking about the gun. And was he regularly coming to your apartment around this time? Yes. About a few times a month when he could. And did he actually come to talk about the gun? Yes. Was he with anyone? Yes, he was. Who was he with? Diaz. I can't pronounce his last name. Is it Diaz Cadabrev? Yes. Was he a friend of the defendant's? Yes. Did you know him as well? Yes, I did. Where did you know him from? He was a good friend of my brother and the defendant's from UMass Dartmouth. Who else was there? Nicholas, my twin brother, and my friend Abdul. And what did you guys do? We just hung out, chilled, smoked weed, same thing we usually do. At some point, did the conversation turn to the gun? Yes. What did you do? I took the gun out of the ceiling panel and showed it to the defendant. And Diaz, what was the gun stored in? It was stored in a sock, just a regular tube sock. Yes. Did you hand the defendant the gun? Yes. What did he do with it? Handled it, acknowledged it, tried to pass it to Diaz. Diaz didn't want to touch it, and he gave it back to me, and I put it away. Did you talk about ammunition? Yes. Did you have ammunition? Yes. Where was that? It was in another sock inside the ceiling panel. Did you show him that? Yes. About how much ammunition did you have? About 10 rounds. Is 10 rounds 10 bullets? Yes. Was there a magazine as well? Yes. Did the defendant say anything when you handed him the gun or the ammunition? He just took the gun, looked at it, acknowledged it, didn't really say much. Describe the gun. The gun's black. It was looked a little rusty. The top slat part had kind of like a little reddish orange hue to it. The serial number was obliterated on a silver panel, and it said P95 on the top slide, and it also says Ruger on the side of the gun. Now, do you know much about guns? No, not really. You said the serial number was obliterated. What does that mean? Scratched off or made to appear so that you can't read it. And have you pled guilty to possessing this gun with the obliterated serial number? Yes, I have. Call up Exhibit 930 for the witness. Do you recognize that? Yes. What is it? That's the gun I possessed. How do you recognize it? Because I've had it in my hands. I've seen it multiple times. I've dealt with it. I'd ask that Exhibit 930 be introduced. No objection. All right. Displayed, please. I'd like to approach in the meantime. Looking at this picture, Mr. Silva, can you describe some of the features you mentioned earlier? There's a screen on that you can touch, and if you can put your finger on it, then it will put notes on the screen so the jury can see what you're talking about. The serial number is obliterated. This is the silver panel. It says Ruger on the side of the gun. It has the reddish rust tint I referred to earlier, and you can see from the picture it looks pretty rusty. There's a lot of color to the gun. P95 around there, and that's about it. May I approach, Your Honor? You may. For the record, Your Honor, I have an item in my hand that has been rendered safe, and I want the witness to know that before I hand it to him. Mr. Silva, do you recognize this item? Yes. What do you recognize it to be? The gun I gave to the defendant. How do you recognize it? For all the characteristics I've already explained, and the Ruger, that obliterated serial number, the reddish hue tint. When did you give this gun to the defendant? About sometime in February 2012, 2013. I move into evidence Exhibit 928. No objection. All right, 928 is admitted. Mr. Silva, after you had your conversation with the defendant and you showed him the gun, did he take it? Not at that specific time. No. How long after you showed him the first time did he take it? Within a few weeks. Did he tell you that he was going to come over to pick it up? Yes. And why did he not pick it up on that day? What did he tell you about why he didn't pick it up on that day? Either he told me that he didn't want to drive back with that type of, things on him. I think he already had marijuana or something on him. He didn't want to drive with all the hassle. Were you expecting to get the gun back shortly after you gave it to him? Yes, I was. And how long after you had given him the gun did you expect to get it back? Within a couple of weeks at most. Let's talk a little bit more about the interaction where he actually picked up the gun. Did he come to your house? Yes. And what happened? We hung out for a little bit, did the same things we usually do. At some point, I gave the defendant the gun. Did he ask for anything else? I gave him ammunition. Did he use a particular phrase to ask for the ammunition? I remember him saying something like food for the dog. What did you take that to mean? Ammo, bullets. How would you refer to the gun with the defendant? We wouldn't talk about it over the phone, we wouldn't say gun or anything. We would refer to it in phrases that were less definite. Was that just in case someone was listening? Yes. When you gave him the gun, was he alone or with anyone? No, he was alone. Do you remember what car he was driving? I think it was a black Camaro. And did you recognize that car? Yes. Whose was it? It was a friend of the defendant, some Indian kid from UMass Dartmouth. Was that a car you had seen him driving before? Yes. After you gave him the gun. When's the next time you talked to him about the gun? Oh, a couple of weeks, 3 weeks after I gave it to him. And why was that? Because I just wanted to ask him what happened with the situation and if he was done using it because I wanted it back. Why did you want the gun back? Around that time, the person who gave it to me, Howie, he kept calling me and asking me to return the gun. So I wanted to give him back, the gun that he let me borrow. Did Howie explain to you why he gave you the gun in the first place? Yeah, he gave it to me because his mother had searched his room and he needed to get it out of the house. Did he tell you anything about the gun? He told me that it was, quote unquote, objection sustained, was When you received the gun, was the serial number obliterated or not? Yes, it was obliterated. Did you tell Howie why you couldn't give the gun back? No, I did not. Did you continue to have contact with the defendant through February and into April of 2013? Yes. About how often? Same amount as usual. About once a week? Yeah, around there, once a week, twice a week. Did the defendant give you the gun back? No, he did not. Did you continue to ask him for the gun? Yes, I did. In addition to yourself asking, did other people ask him? Yes. Who else asked him? Nicholas. How did Nicholas ask him? He sent him a text via phone. Did the defendant respond to Nicholas? No, he did not. Did the defendant respond to you? Yes, he did. What did the defendant tell you as to why he couldn't give the gun back? He just kept coming up with excuses, saying when he would come, he was in a rush, I couldn't bring it, was just beating around the bush, I'd say. Did he mention he was doing anything with the gun at that point? No. Objection, objection, overruled. Did he mention that he did what he did on spring break? No, he did not. Did he tell you, strike that? How were you communicating with the defendant during this time? Cell phone usually. Was that text as well as phone calls? Yes. Do you still have the phone that you were using? No, I do not. Where is it? No idea. It was disposed of. We'll get to that in a second. Let's talk a little bit about the defendant. How good of a student was the defendant? The defendant was a very good student in high school. What did he tell you about his grades? I know in high school he had a pretty high grade point average in the high 80s. And how about in college? We didn't. He told me his first semester he had kind of struggled a little bit, but then his second semester he had stopped messing around and improved his GPA highly. Did you take classes with him in high school? Yes, I did. And particularly in junior and senior year, did you take a class with Mr. Mateo and Ms. Ati? Yes. Were there ever conversations about terrorism in those classes? In Ms. Adi's class, yes. All right, that will conclude our Q&A practice.